Hello and welcome to the Post to Post podcast. Today is Tuesday, July 18th. It's in the afternoon. It's 4:42 p.m. here in Stratford, Prince Edward Island. This podcast is going to be a little late, a couple days late, I guess. We were a little busy doing some other video stuff with your radio.
Yeah, that'll be online sometime.
More of a Patreon video. So if you're not subscribed to or not contributing on Patreon, unfortunately, you won't be able to see that. But for you fine Patreon folk, hopefully you enjoy it. It's a pretty interesting video, and it's pretty nerdy. No offense.
I'll cop to that.
It's a little nerdy, but it is interesting. So it was fun making it as well.
It was a lot of fun. We've also spent some time, you more so than me, but both of us, I guess, from off and on, building our studio down here in the broadcast center.
Probably the first thing I should have mentioned. We switched it up a little bit. We put together this new desk, and it's just in our basement now, so it's a little industrial.
The broadcast center.
The broadcast center, yeah. But we plan on putting curtains up all around us, and that's the plan. But for right now, this is what you get, I guess. And I wore my new, what I'm going to call my podcasting shirt with a hat and headphones and stuff. But it's the dog days of summer. There's not a lot of hockey to talk about, but there are a few things. So what I was thinking for this episode is that we would talk a little bit of hockey, a little bit of signings, there's some retirement, and then maybe we can move on to some personal stuff, a little off-topic stuff about some books you're writing. So let's get into this for all you fine hockey folk at home who are waiting for us to talk about hockey. Tyler Johnson, let's talk about him first. He's 26, plays for Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously. He just signed 7 years, or got extended 7 years at $5 million per year. I think this is a pretty good deal for Tampa. $5 million for his production is pretty great. He's just a small guy. He's fast. However, can be inconsistent at times. So I don't want to call him a risky player because he's very good, but I wish he was more consistent in my view. But I think it's a good signing.
It's the $5 million is the cap hit over the term of the contract, but his salary actually fluctuates up and down as it has been doing. You know, like 3 years ago he made $2.8 million, then he made $3.2, and last year he made $4 million. So this year, coming year, it'll be $5 million.
Yeah, you get a bit of a raise.
More than $5 million, because the first year it's it'll be $5 million this year coming, and then 6.75.
Okay.
Then 5.5, and then it move ups and down, but the overall cap hit is $5 million.
Yes, the average. So
the average, yeah, and that goes right to 23, 24. That's a long time for a player that does have his ups and downs.
Yeah, he's 26, just about to turn 27. So 7 years, maybe 34. Pretty good time to re-sign for your next contract. So I think that's think that's good. If you're a Tampa fan, you can be pretty happy about that.
I think so, and I think if you're him, I think it's a good deal for him. I think it fairly rewards him for his performance, but more so for his potential. And now he has to live up to the money that he's going to be making, and I think he can do it.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Let's keep with the Tampa Bay trend. Andre Palat, 26 as well, signed for 5 years, $5.3 million average per year. This one, to me, I think they overpaid a little bit, just maybe a little bit. But still pretty happy with this signing. He fits great in Tampa. I love what he does in Tampa. I'm glad he's going to be there for the next 5 years and hopefully longer. I can see him fitting in really well continually with that team. So
yeah, he's not quite to a point per game, but he's got over 50 points in 75 games last year, and that's this day and age. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's been consistent.
Yeah, he has, and I think that's also an acceptable deal, just like the one we just spoke of. Yeah.
So great news for Tampa. I think that pretty much wraps up their signings and stuff. I think they have like $3.32 million left on the cap space. So I heard rumors recently that they might actually try to get Tavares to lure there, and we've talked about Tavares last podcast, but I don't know if Yzerman can pull that off. I know he's come off as a bit of a genius these past couple of years, but I think that might be a little bit above his skill set to land Tavares. But who knows? I mean, his buddy Stamkos is there, so.
And Tavares has this year that's left, and we discussed this. He appears to be in no great hurry to go anywhere. So
he's taking his time. Yeah,
it would take a pretty shiny carrot, I think, to
a swamp rabbit carrot.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's move on to Jean-Gabriel Pageau,
right,
who just signed back with the Ottawa Senators, or extended 3 years, $3.1 million per year. He's 24, so by the time he's 27, he'll be ready for his next contract. I was a little surprised the contract wasn't a little longer. I'm pretty sure the Ottawa fans and organization love Pageau. Mm-hmm. He was phenomenal in the playoffs.
He was great
this past season.
He was great, and
even in the regular season, he had a great season.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite players on Ottawa for sure.
Me too.
Very happy to see him return. So, good news for Ottawa fans there at a respectable price for his production. So.
I think so, a very respectable price, and his salary will go up each year as well, peaking at 3.4 in his last year. I think it's a great deal for Ottawa. I think he's worth at least that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know who would be responsible for it not being longer, whether it's the team or whether it's him. Maybe both. But if I was the Ottawa Senators, given what I've seen from him so far, I would have offered him as long as he wanted.
I would have too, yeah. Mm-hmm. I probably would have even maybe thrown $4 million at him.
Yep.
I think he's worth $4 million.
Yeah, I think it's a good deal.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about maybe the biggest news of the week. Very tenured player, Brian Campbell. Mm-hmm. He 17 seasons. He's retired officially from the NHL. He's going to move into the Chicago Blackhawks front office. So that's good. I mean, he quits his job and gets a new one right away. So that's fantastic. It's always great to see players transition into those roles and give a go at something new, I guess. And so it's just going to be interesting. Good for the Blackhawks. And he played for Buffalo, San Jose, Chicago, and Florida, and now he's going back to Chicago.
Yeah,
so.
And he had long stints with Buffalo and Florida, so he had a lot of his playing career was with teams that weren't doing exceptionally well, and he was one of the good guys. We're talking about him in the past tense. Shouldn't be. He is one of the good guys.
He's still alive.
He's still alive. He's a very, very hard worker, full of energy when he played. Yet one year he won the Lady Byng Trophy for being, one of the most recognizable, gentlemanly players.
Oh, good for him. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was back with Florida probably 6-7 years ago. And I think that's, if you can be a player that produces for your team and still has low penalty minutes and is recognized for being a good head on the ice, I think that's a great asset.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope we wish him well in Chicago.
Yeah.
I think that actually pretty much wraps up all the hockey news. That's, like I said at the beginning, it's the dog days of summer, and there's just not a lot of NHL talk.
If there was Australian, New Zealand, and South African hockey, it's winter down there right now.
Yeah,
we would have all kinds of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, but I don't know how many followers would be happy about that. But
yeah, I don't know.
So one of the things we mentioned, and I think 2 or 3 podcasts ago, was talking about personal stuff or stories unrelated to hockey, just kind of taking it easy and having a conversation. So that's what we're going to do right now. You're in the process of, I guess, writing 3 books. I don't know if that's uncommon. I don't know if people write one book and then move on to the other, but you're writing 3 at the one time. So
yeah,
it's I know it's a long process for each of the 3 books.
I'm writing 3, but they're all completely different directions, so it's easy for me to keep them separate in my mind.
Yeah. Let's talk about the genealogy one first.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if you want to release the name of the book, but you can explain what it is, at least.
Well, the minute I release the name, then I get to copyright it, so I'm not worried about anyone stealing it.
Yeah, I guess.
The genealogy book, it's a collaboration with my first cousin, a cousin of mine in Fredericton, Cameron. And we are in the early stages, I must say, of doing this book, but we have several chapters done, and Cameron has an agent because he's already a published author.
He is, yeah.
I am not. And the title is The Pirate, the Prostitute, and the President.
Yeah.
And not that they were all in the same room at the same time. The president is someone who served over 100 years ago, Warren G. Harding. And the pirate and the prostitute were a married couple in what is now New York back in the early 1600s. You and me and Cameron and millions of people are actually descendant from the pirate and the prostitute, who were early Dutch settlers in New Amsterdam. And the book is about our journey, Cameron and mine, and our journey doing research on these people and all the other people that have become descendants of those. We have some interesting distant cousin connections that will be revealed in the book. And it's also about our methods. You know, how do you look at a census? What information can you pull out of a census record that can help you move on to other things? Other vital statistics records like marriages, deaths, burials, births, all those things tell you information that you may not be able to get anywhere else. And we're lucky because, you know, living in North America under what was formerly a British common law system of record keeping, the Americans and Canadians have very similar ways of recording these types of events. So because so many Canadians and Americans share a common family history back and forth, it's not that hard to move from one country to another and read the other country's documents and make sense out of them. So the book is really, hopefully, a humorous look on how genealogy can be done from the perspective of two people who actually have done it.
So, I mean, this kind of, I guess it's still a hobby of yours, but it started out as just a small hobby.
Oh, yeah.
And then you followed the rabbit hole down through the tree branches, I guess you could say, and found lots of information. And you've sent your DNA away to, is it Ancestry?
Ancestry. I've actually done 2 DNA samples for 2 different outfits. Ancestry is the main one, yeah.
And so you got some statistics back, which further helped your interest in finding more about yourself and your past. So it's been, I mean, all the stories you've told me, some of them aren't very interesting because everyone's related to everyone, it seems, but the book should be interesting.
I hope so. You know, it'll be probably a limited market for it, but genealogy is one of the biggest and fastest growing pastimes.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is huge. There are entire tours devoted to genealogy and conferences and other podcasts. And they're fascinating. Everyone has a great story. Like, as you say, everyone is related to everyone. If you go back far enough, that's true. And everyone has interesting people. I mean, if you dig far enough, you will find a pirate and you will find a prostitute. And not just, not just us. Everybody will find it.
Yeah, the title kind of sounds like a game of Clue or something. It's but, I mean, you've progressed now to the point where you want to actually visit some of these graveyards down in New Jersey and New York and walk through and look at the names and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's such and such. I have him in blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
there's actually a graveyard in Topsfield, Massachusetts that I visited a couple of years ago that has your mother's 6th and 7th great-grandfathers buried side by side. They would be your 7th and 8th great-grandfathers. So they're not related to me directly, but through your mother, you are related to these 2 guys, and they both died in 1754 or 1755. And their gravestones are right beside each other on a part of the graveyard that is right next to the highway that goes down through Topsfield. And these gravestones are made out of sandstone, which you'd think would wear away over the last 250 years, but they haven't worn away. You can read them. And I just can't wait to get farther south into New Jersey and Brooklyn and Lower Manhattan. And not that I'll find anybody in the Trinity Church Cemetery. None of the people we're related to were well off status-wise, I don't think, so we're not going to see any monuments.
And we don't have any royal blood going
Not that I can find.
Yeah.
No.
What can you tell me some of the not necessarily famous but interesting people we are related to some way or another on your side?
Sure. Through my side of the family, we are related to and descendant from the pirate and the prostitute, Anthony Jansen Van Soleil and Greedy Reiners. They actually have names, these people. And we are related to all the Vanderbilts. So that would put us related to, Gloria Vanderbilt and the people who built the Vanderbilt Mansion. We're related to the Astors. And these are wealthy families from New York in the early to mid-1800s, starting off, some of them in Staten Island, but a lot of them in Manhattan. That would make us related to Anderson Cooper, for instance, who's a CNN guy. We're related to him. He's my 9th cousin. We are also related, purportedly, to Jackie Kennedy.
Wow.
Yep. She came from, some of the American side of her family because she has a lot of French blood, too, the Bouvier side. We're related to some people who were in Congress and other important roles in government in the United States in the 1800s. And they include Warren G. Harding, who was president for a while.
And that's the president from the book?
Yeah, that's the president. And there are other presidents that the DNA says we are probably related. Like, for instance, your mother. Ancestry says there's a strong possibility your mother is related to President Lyndon Johnson, who was president from 1963 until 1969 when Nixon was inaugurated. So, I don't know if that's a solid connection just yet. I'm still working on that one. And
that's part of the fun.
Oh, yeah.
Is finding out. And there's a bit of, I don't know the right word, but accomplishment, I guess, when you actually do find 100%, be able to fill that gap. So that's part of the journey, I guess.
Yeah, and on your mother's side, you're related to more interesting people than I am. Your mother shares common grandparents way back with William Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah, that's a popular name.
Very popular name, and he's considered to be the inventor of the modern English language, so that's not too shabby.
It's too bad I wasn't better at it.
I think you're pretty good.
Anyone else on Mom's side?
Lots. There are the former Lord Mayors of London. She's related to a gentleman who was a very close associate of King Henry VII. And when Henry VII died and was succeeded by Henry VIII, this ancient ancestor of your mother's was kept in the royal court in Hampton by Henry VIII. And when Henry VIII finally died, his last surviving widow of the 6 wives he had actually gave a special grant and land and everything to this ancestor of you and your mother.
So we just helped them. We were butlers.
Well, yeah, I think it's more than that. You know, probably advisors, people in the court. So they would be, not just folks who held a sign or, polished a sword. I think there's a little more to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. No, thanks for sharing that.
One of the books.
And let's move on to book number 2. This is a bit of a science book, or not 100% a science book. It involves many aspects, but the majority of it is about a solar storm. So Earth has a magnetic field now, which protects us from solar radiation. And in your book, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a massive solar storm, and the magnetic field flexes and it creates the radiation to hit the Earth more than it should, which in turn creates acts as an EMP or an electromagnetic pulse and knocks out a lot of power.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. And
the book is fiction. You can almost call it science fiction, but it's very close to fact. And it's a bit of a cautionary tale because this has already happened. This a storm of the magnitude that I'm writing about happened in 1859 and probably several times before that. But the last one we have a record of is in 1859. And in the early September of that year, a massive solar flare leapt off the surface of the sun and rushed towards the Earth, actually 2, one behind the other. And when they struck the Earth's outer shields, if you want to call it that, the Earth's magnetic field, it energized tremendously and even influenced activities on the surface. Now, this is back at a time in 1859. There was no TV, radio, or telephone, no internet, no Blackberries, nothing. So this electromagnetic energy came down basically to the surface of the Earth and interacted with any technology that did exist at the time, which was very sparse. There was an account of the energy getting into telegraph lines, because back then, as they were building trains across North America, they would run poles and run wires in those poles, and they would signal each other using telegraph. And the signals from the sun into the magnetic field of the Earth were so powerful that it lit fires on these poles. They caught fire. These wires got so hot. So what I've done with the book, and what I'm in the process of doing, and I'm probably 35% into the book now, is describing the danger of what could conceivably happen if the same size storm were to hit today.
So it's fiction, but it's based on actual possible events, and it kind of acts like a warning to everyone that, hey, we should be paying attention a little bit more to the sun, maybe. That's
right, and there are things we can do, and I hope, if the book gets all the way to the end and people even read the thing, which is a long shot, hopefully they'll be left with a sense of, not so much what can I do. We can't do anything to stop the solar flare from happening.
Right.
But what we can do is protect ourselves against the effects of the solar flare by providing ourselves with backup means of power, backup means of communication when it does happen, if it does happen. And it's not really a matter of if, it's more so a matter of when.
Oh, it's going to happen, yeah.
It's going to happen, and hopefully it'll happen not till after the book comes out. Because if it comes out before the book, it's going to really ruin it for me, and probably for the world. But, there are satellites in orbit now. They have already in the past, several of them, including an Anik satellite, a Canadian satellite, were affected by a solar flare in the past and actually got wiped. Half the satellite was wiped out, and it couldn't transmit anymore. So you multiply that by all these new satellites that have been launched since then. Our GPS system is based on those satellites. If enough of those satellites were to get knocked out by a solar flare, the GPS would vanish. We would have no more GPS. And we have come to rely on it so heavily in the last 10, 15 years. A lot of people probably would have difficulty getting by without it.
Well, it's everywhere. It's in your phone. Pilots use it. It's literally everywhere.
It's everywhere. And telecommunications, a lot of the internet, most of it's probably on fiber through cables under the ocean now, and that would be safe. But there is a lot of communication going through satellites, and if they're knocked out, then that stops. The power grid, and that's the main focus of the book, is what these kinds of surges can do to the power grid. They can knock entire cities off. And this has happened even with lesser flares already.
In the 80s in Quebec?
Yes, there was one in 1986, I believe it was, in Quebec in March. The Northern Lights were so strong on the biggest night of that I stopped on my way home from a meeting in Fredericton, and I stopped in a darkened field, what we call Fraser's Field in McGivney. And not only were the Northern Lights lighting up the northern sky, but if I turned south, I could see the Northern Lights in the southern sky.
Wow.
And Northern Lights were seen as far south as Cuba that night in Central America. So, and that's when the grid went down in Quebec. Basically, the whole province kicked off.
Yeah.
And it caused blackouts in adjacent grids as well.
So this affects electronics that are on. If, hypothetically, if they knew it was coming and they shut down all the power grids and basically all the electronics, and it hit, and then it passed, would we be able to power up everything without any repercussions?
Well, that's the direction the book is heading.
Oh.
The question becomes, that debate will happen. It'll happen in my book. It'll happen in the White House. It'll happen in the National Science Foundation. It'll happen in the military. Is it worthwhile doing? Is it worthwhile shutting the power grids off, grounding all the wires, and then letting the solar storm hit, and then after the storm has passed, energize everything and put it back on? The theory will be tested in the book. So it's a very good question.
From what I remember you telling me months ago, your book follows multiple storylines of individuals. So you have a pilot in your book, and you have someone who works at a weather station or something like that. So it kind of follows different people and tells their stories and how they deal with it and prepare for it and all that stuff. Is that correct?
It is. And there's going to be political intrigue as well. The person who works at the forecasting center is actually the space weather forecasting guy.
Yeah.
And he develops a theory of how to more accurately predict future storms. And he sees one coming. His task then is to convince his superiors and other people that there's a storm coming. And if and when they finally believe his advice, their challenge becomes, what do we do about it? Because if they shut down the power grid, it'll take probably 2 or 3 weeks to shut it down and turn it back on again.
Right.
People will die.
Yeah.
Especially if it happens in the winter. And since I'm writing the book, it's going to happen in the winter. Also, there's a debate in the American military. Like, if we know this flare is coming, do we tell the Russians? Do we tell the Chinese? Or do we just let it happen to them? And it's like having a weapon that you didn't even have to pull the trigger on. It just happened, and you just didn't warn them about it ahead of time.
Interesting.
So how public does this get? What kind of debates and battles happen? And what if a couple of keen reporters in Washington find out about this? What do they do ethically, whether they broadcast the story themselves or not?
Very interesting.
I think so.
This could be a movie.
Well, I'm thinking that. I'd love that. If movie houses want to give me a call for a pre-version of the screenplay, I'll be happy to work with you on that.
Yeah, shout out. Come on, Hollywood. So I don't think people understand how actually serious this is. If that 1859 storm hit today, it would take decades to get back to...
It would. It would knock us back at least 100 years.
Yeah.
And that sounds drastic, but it's true. The only things that would survive intact are older technology, tube-type radios and that kind of thing. Anything more modern that has transistors in it, they're very sensitive to low voltage fluctuations, and they could be knocked out. The power grid especially is vulnerable because the power is transmitted from the generating station or the hydroelectric dam or the nuclear plant to a city on these very high-capacity lines, and they carry tremendously high voltages. And the voltages are way too high to be used by us in our houses, so they're stepped down from in places called in stations with transformers. and the transformers step the voltage down to a manageable amount of power that we can use in our houses. These transformers, they will heat up when this magnetic storm arrives. They will heat up and they will overheat, and then they will break down and fail. Some of these transformers were built on the sites where they sit now. They can't be just trucked in. You can't just pick up the phone and say, oh, I'd like a new transformer, please. This one appears to have blown up.
Yeah.
They have to be planned years in advance. They have to come over by boat. There's only 2 places right now that are making these transformers. One is in Germany and the other is in South Korea. So it would be years and years and years before the power grid could be, even now, if we started today to upgrade the power grid, it would be years and years and years before we would be even close to being protected.
So there's a serious issue here that a lot of people don't actually know about.
That's right. It's very serious. And the people in power in Washington do know about it.
Right.
Obama signed an executive order just last fall, before he finished his presidency, to launch a very serious effort to try to get the fire lit under some of these power utilities and other agencies, to get them all on board with, finding a way to protect the United States. And Canada and the U.S. are so integrated with their power, we're all in the same boat here.
Yeah, exactly. We're part of one big family, I guess. We're on the same continent, so if it affects them, it affects us, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But I'm looking forward to your book, regardless.
I'm having fun with it.
Yeah,
at least.
So, how often do you switch back and forth between these books? Like, do you work on one for a week and then do another for a day, or?
Yeah, usually more than a week, actually. Right now I'm throwing myself into this book we've just been talking about, the science fiction book. Tentatively to be called Flare, or, if a publisher gets it and wants it called something else, man, they can call it whatever they like, as long as they're going to send me a check.
Exactly,
because right now I'm doing this for nothing.
Yeah.
But it is my current focus right now. The genealogy book is something, because I'm doing it with Cameron, and he has a busy life of his own. We'll work on that as we can. It's more of a wintertime activity, I think, with that.
Right.
When he's a little less mobile, and me too. And the third book is I'm basically finished the third book except for revisions, and that's something I pick away at when I want to. And the third book.
And that is the least interesting to me. No offense, and maybe to a lot of people. It's a political book.
Yeah, it's a memoir.
Right.
Because I had a past career in that field, not very long career, but it led to very interesting work that I did after that. So it's a memoir of my public life, my private life prior to that, and how it has shaped me and informed me about public issues and ways to approach policy that I think would be of some interest to some people some of the time.
Some of the time.
Well, it's a lower priority.
So that'll be, or when do the revisions happen?
They're happening now on a very occasional basis. What I did was when I finished the first draft of the book, I sent copies of it out to some journalists and other well-informed friends of mine to read it and comment. And I've received those comments back now, and I'm trying to integrate those comments, which are very good suggestions, into the book. So it will curve in a different direction, but it basically the middle 3/4 of it will remain the same.
Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing those 3 things with me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And
thanks for asking.
No problem. And I guess I hope you get going on that science fiction book, because I'd like to read that. I
have sent out a couple of chapters to a friend of mine who's read them and already made some great suggestions for me, because he knows some terminology that I don't know. And not to belabor that, I don't want your listeners to go to sleep here or stay asleep, but I have had some great help already on the science fiction book.
Right.
I made contact with a real live forecaster in Boulder, Colorado, who has answered several of my questions. I've also made contact with a senior planetary scientist in the United States, who was actually for a while, the Juno mission to Jupiter?
Absolutely.
She is one of the head people who is coordinating that entire mission, and she was kind enough to answer some questions of mine. So these people will be thanked.
Wow, that's amazing.
Profusely in the book. The support I've had from folks who really have lots more to do than talk to me, because I'm just a nobody author, has been tremendous, and I'm very happy.
So what's your plan to publish that one?
Right now, I'm considering doing what Andy Weir did. Andy Weir is the guy who wrote The Martian.
Yes.
And he is doing, or he was doing, roughly what I'm doing. And I'm very much inspired by his journey from being a writer to a published author.
It was a digital self-publish, wasn't it?
It was,
yeah.
Yes. And I'm considering that as one possible way. I am going to send the manuscript out to a couple of publishers that I'm aware of would be maybe receptive to this kind of book. But I'm also considering, and I have the ability to do what I like, publish parts of the book online. There are websites that authors use to publish excerpts of their books and receive comments from fans and colleagues.
Yeah.
And I may do that. I've explored and created some accounts in some of those sites. And I may end up publishing it just on Amazon. Andy Weir did that eventually. He said, I'm going to put it up on Amazon as an ebook, and I'm going to charge 99 cents for it. Just, you know, he just wanted to really give it away. And Amazon said, we don't do free.
Yeah, that's the lowest they'd go.
That's the lowest they'd go, was 99 cents. So he said, okay, 99 cents.
Yeah.
And even though he had a free version on his own website, more people bought the 99-cent version than downloaded the free version, because I think they wanted to have something of value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe,
and
who knows?
It caught fire from there, and if you've seen the movie, I guess you know how that played out pretty well for Andy Weir. So
very well for Andy Weir, and hopefully really well for Brent Taylor.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, it's been about 30 minutes, so maybe we can wrap this one up.
Maybe so. Did you want to talk about
oh, yes, just
that little
briefly.
envelope back there?
So we opened up a P.O. box recently, made a video about it, and this is our first letter. It's the only one that's came so far. So it's from a kid in Nova Scotia, I believe. I won't show the front to give away any names or anything, but
we think it might be a kid, and they're from Barrington Passage, I think it might be.
Yeah, so
if you're the person who sent that, we got it.
You got it. Just waiting to open it. We're going to wait, collect a few letters, collect a few packages, if there are any, and then open them all at once on camera and make a video for the channel. So just a waiting game right now, I guess. Just waiting for more to come in, and I don't know how long we're going to wait. Maybe, I guess it depends on how much stuff comes.
Yeah, we don't want this young gentleman to wait too long.
Exactly.
Or lady, whoever it may be. But yeah, hopefully, if the comments that I've seen in the YouTube, and on the Discord are any indication, there is stuff on its way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just a matter of waiting for it to go plop.
Yeah. Interesting verbiage there.
Yeah.
Speaking of Discord, maybe we should plug that a little bit. We've been having some great conversations on our Discord server. The link will be in the description. If you want to talk hockey with fellow hockey fans or with us, we communicate on there quite often. There's different rooms, EA Sports, people play NHL 17 or 16 and stuff online. There's all kinds of gamers in there talking, making teams, playing together. We have a general hockey section where we just chat about hockey. We have an off-topic section, which, if you want to talk about something that's not hockey like we did today, you can go to the off-topic session and, just chat up with the people. So lots of different rooms. So yeah, if you guys aren't part of the aren't part of the Discord, hope you can join and contribute to some conversations. I think I said Patreon by accident there, so I guess I'll plug that too. We got a Patreon.
Nice segue.
With different levels. You can contribute as little as $1 and see some behind-the-scenes post-to-post stuff, some videos, and learn a little bit more about us as people and hockey fans, and see some of our collections. Justin's made videos on there. We just did a video, which I believe we talked about at the beginning of this video, about radios and stuff. I made a kayaking video a couple days ago. So, some unrelated hockey stuff, but, if you like us, then it's a good way to see a little bit more about our lives. And you're also helping the channel grow financially, which allows us to do more things quality-wise, production and stuff like that.
Help us continue to expand the broadcast center.
Exactly, yeah. Hopefully this gets a little better as time goes on, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you guys want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter at Post to Post Show. Same on Instagram, Post to Post Show. Facebook, Post to Post Show. Same name for all three platforms. If you want to send me an email if you have any questions, it's posttopostshow@gmail.com. Otherwise, guys, thank you very much for listening or watching this podcast, because we are filming this, if you haven't already known from watching this on YouTube, for the past 30 minutes. So, yeah, thanks everybody for listening and watching. Leave a review on iTunes, Google Play Music. Subscribe on the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button, and we'll see you next time. Adios.
See ya.